Hello everyone, welcome to Keystone Academia. This is Ms. Saudagar. Today we'll be discussing industry analysis of Cewmlator, our case study for November 25 and February 26. So if you're preparing for the exams for November or Feb for strategic case study in CIMA, you need to be very confident about the industry. Remember, when you are sitting at the strategic case study, your theory and all play a less role compared to management case study and operational case study. So here we need to keep a close eye what's happening in the industry. Many times what happened in the past, what was happening in the industry has become an exam question. So it can give you a hint for the exam. Secondly, it also helps you to give you an idea what type of issues are happening in the industry. For example, any mergers or acquisition is happening. So you can keep a close eye. Okay, it also gives an industry insight. For example, comparing our share price to, let's say in our case, Tesla share price or BYD share price, or what's happening in Tesla, what's happening in BYD. These are two major companies which you can compare with Cewmlator. So we have tried to cover the major areas again, but having said all of that, you don't need to be an expert at the industry, because as you understand, this is, after all, it's an exam and we have limited time to do all of this. We have tried to cover most of the topic. If you do this, it will be enough for the exam in terms of industry analysis. Apart from this, maybe you can keep a close eye what's happening in the industry. You can just watch news in every 2 days, just EV manufacturers, what are the trending news, and that should be fine. So if we get started, so what we are trying to cover here is, we'll look at basically 7 topics here. First is overview and scope. For example, how the industry is segmented, what is geographic coverage. For example, which area, let's say in China we have higher penetration, which area has lower penetration, let's say Africa. That will focus. Then market dynamics, where the growth is coming, what is the growth drivers and what are the growth restraints. For example, driver is the environmental benefit, what they're sustainability, but restraint is the cost, the infrastructure for charging the electric vehicles. Customers and demand analysis will also do. What kind of customers are buying, what is the age group, what is their earning, all of this. Supply chain operations, what is happening in the supply chain. For example, if we compare with BYD and other companies, BYD has created their entire ecosystem of their own. In fact, they are creating a mega factory in, I think, Zhejiang, some area in China, where they will have everything in one place. I think they've got like 40 square miles area just for this factory. So they are building the entire ecosystem in just one place. Financial performance, what is happening, how companies are managing their finance, are they profitable or not, how it is reflecting on the share price. External forces and strategic risk, how the ecosystem, the changing government regulations, the geopolitical issues, how they affect it, how it gives a soft power, to the countries who are having good companies. Future outlook, what can happen in the future and how things are interconnected. So these are the major areas which we think it's important for you. So let's get started. So first is overview and scope. However, you don't need to remember most of this, just understand, and some of the points, if you feel important, maybe you can remember that, you just write it down in your own notes, so you can use that as an example. All right. So the global electric vehicle market is surging towards mass adoption. So overall, it's growing with 20 million EVs expected to sold in 2025. 20 million is a big number if you compare this to representing more than 25% of all new car sales. So every fourth car that is going to be bought this year, we're always, anyways coming to the end, should be EV. I mean, obviously, it's like overall average. Maybe in China, we can see 50%, and maybe in India, we can see only 10%. It depends. China, Europe, and the US dominate, while emerging markets are rapidly gaining ground. Emerging markets are growing, but however, China and Europe, the US has dominated the industry, particularly China. Global sales, if you look at, EV sales exceed 17 million units in 2024, up 3.5 million from previous year. In 2025, sales are projected to surpass 20 million, marking a 35% year-on-year growth. So you can imagine the year-on-year 35%. That means almost every 3 years it's getting double. Fleet expansion, the group of vehicles. The global EV fleet reached 58 million vehicles by the end of 2024. So we are expecting now, or we are assuming that 58 million vehicles are actually running on the road globally. That's a very big number. That means we have some basic level of infrastructure. EVs are central to achieving net zero emission by 2050. So a lot of government have promised, let's say in European Union is there, in US and other countries, they have promised, by 2050, 2060, depending on the country's current position, they will be more sustainable or become net zero emission or carbon neutral. What I'll do is, when we are posting this on YouTube, you will get the PDF as well. We'll try to put a link there, so you can also have then access to this PDF. That's a free document. Okay. Now, if you look at the key segment of the industry, passenger vehicles is the highest, because obviously vehicles we can keep dividing in bus and other things. So passenger vehicle is 72.4% almost, dominates EV adoption. Then we have other vehicles like BEV, fully electric, zero type line. So it's mix of both. Then we have plug-in hybrids, electric motors, internal combustion engine. There also demand is there. Then commercial EV is growing, vans, buses. For example, in London, if you see, the government has bought BYD buses for the local transport. The double buses, traditional fancy London bus, red bus. So they have got from BYD. EV charging expanding rapidly includes home, public, and fast charging. So home, obviously you have a charger. Now public, if you go to a park in developed countries, you can see some places we have a small parking for a small charging options. Then some gas stations, petrol pumps, they're also, moving to the electric vehicle charging. Or we have some private place where the EV charging is coming. But again, that will be chargeable. So that will be a source of revenue for them. The global EV market in 25 is 393 billion industry with over 20 million vehicles sold. Can you imagine? 393 billion industry. So industry is technically growing, led by China. China is number one. Then obviously we are getting some demand from Southeast Asia, Latin America, Africa, but still to a very marginal number. If you look specifically China, 60% of new car sales in 2025 expected to be electric. 60%. That means, even assume this is, not exact, let's say between 50 to 60, but it says the dominant of EV is more than the ICE engines in the China. So this is a market, and definitely the government and everyone is investing in infrastructure. Europe sales plateaued at 20% market share in 2024 due to subsidy phase out. But one risk or challenge they are facing, we have seen this in pre-scene analysis also, that the subsidy is being taken out by the government. If you see in US, 1 in 10 new cars in 2024 was EVs. So comparatively slower. And again, in US, when the new government has come in now, they're also pulling out the subsidy. Till now, Tesla was getting a lot of support, but new government come in and the changes will definitely affect the industry. If you see other emerging market, Southeast Asia, EV reached 9% of car sale with Thailand and Vietnam leading. 9% is, pretty good number. Latin America also is doubled, but again, the percentage is very small. Africa, if you see, sales doubled, but again, it's just 1%. Why? Because in Africa, maybe people are buying a lot of used vehicle. Reselling is happening. So that's more affordable, and maybe it's more sustainable. And definitely infrastructure is very, very bad in these countries. That's also another reason. Other industry highlights, if you can see, like battery innovation is there, gear factory expansion, aftermath market and services there, connected ecosystem, OEM strategy, trade and tariff tensions. This is specific to that. We'll see later also. This extra chart, you can just read it. Now going to the market dynamics. EV manufacturing undergoing a transformative shift globally, driven by cost declines, policy mandates, and consumer demand. So though government is taking out the subsidy, but the positive side here is the cost of battery is coming down, the cost of production is coming down because it is happening at a massive scale. So economies of scale is helping here. So one way it's going up because of the subsidy taken out, another way is coming down. So technically, one of the reason why EVs was not selling or still is not preferred in many places over ICE engine because of the cost. But imagine if the cost come down, definitely it can bring some level of revolution. By 2030, the sector is projected to exceed $1 trillion in value, with Asia's leading production and innovation. Why Asia? Because of China. In fact, China is planning in BYD, they're setting up such a big gigafactory where in every minute they'll make two new cars. That means 30 seconds a single new electric vehicle. You can imagine. In fact, they're expected to employ almost 1 million people, 900,000 to 1 million people, becoming a biggest employer in China. I mean, as we are talking, it's under the process. And out of that, they have planned almost 100,000 just to be in R&D. So that shows their dedication in research and development. They want to employ 100,000 people. You can imagine how difficult it is to get that 100,000 people who are talented enough for research, then how much cost is required and their dedication. And companies' risk capacity, risk appetite, everything comes into that. Because a lot of companies are struggling for R&D because they know that a lot of time they put in money and they might not get the expected result or desired result. So it becomes an expense, a very big expense. The EV manufacturing industry is evolving rapidly as governments, OEMs, and consumer converge around decarbonizing goals. In 25, global EV production is expected to surpass 20 million units, with China and US and Europe accounting for 80% of all. But the problem of this, they are limited into this market itself, China, US, and Europe. Apart from that, India is also emerging. But again, India infrastructure, policies, a lot of other challenges is there. What are the growth drivers? If you see on the positive side, battery cost is declining, or we can say more innovation is happening in the battery. Policy incentive is reduced, but still there. Consumer shift to sustainability is happening. Consumer, if you see, at least the businesses, if they're buying their fleet of vehicles, they are moving to EVs. They are not dependent on ICE engine because it will help in their integrated reporting to achieve their sustainability goal. So battery cost decline, lithium ion batteries price have dropped from 1100 per kilowatt to 120. That's a massive difference. Policy incentive, production link incentive, tax rebates, reduce GST rates, GST or VAT, indirect taxes. In India also, like certain states, Gujarat, Maharashtra, they have come with subsidies. Consumer shift to sustainability, rising fuel prices and eco-conscious behavior are accelerating EV adoptions. Infrastructure expansion, fast charging networks, and battery swapping stations are scaling. So running cost overall of car is low, but the problem is to acquire it. When you buy, the cost is very different. And we have companies like BYD who are doing research. They want to move from lithium ion to sodium ion. Why sodium can be benefited? I mean, lithium is the best battery, but sodium, in a way, it's good because it's easy to procure. When we mine for lithium, when we mine that material, so technically lithium is a very small part of it, but the same thing has a lot of sodium, which doesn't get utilized in the battery. But what if we use it? So automatic will get a lot of surplus of the raw materials and making battery, the cost will come down. But the problem with sodium batteries they are not very powerful enough, like the lithium. What are the restraints? Raw material volatility, regulatory fragmentation, every country and all. Usually like is dominated by China and US for manufacturing, but other companies are also catching up. But the problem is double taxation, tariffs, and a lot of this have become a restraints. High upfront cost is there for the consumer. Charging infrastructure gap. This is the major problem. You see, in Africa, we have less than one charger per 100 kilometer. Maybe this is not exact information, but approximately we have tried to gather this from the open sources. The regulatory environment remains fragmented but increasingly active. For example, US Inflation Reduction Act is there. EV tax rate they are getting. EU Fit for 55. China new mandate. 22% of automaker sales must be NEVs by 25. So technically strong export and battery policy support. Electric vehicles they are supporting. In India also extended subsidies for domestic electric vehicles and components. 5% tax, GST, goods and service tax. Maintain localization targets enforced. So different countries are coming up with. But the thing is, government want the companies to give employment and give employment local. Emerging trend, battery cost decline. Next generation battery chemistries are coming up. Like other than depending on lithium. Software defined vehicles, maintenance via software. It's already there, but going to the next level. Regionalized supply chain, local supply chain to reduce these tariffs and other dependency on government regulation. Changing infrastructure expansion. Sorry, charging infrastructure expansion. Though it is a big challenge, but still it is growing at a slower speed, but it's growing. What are the stakeholders we have? We have car makers. Car makers or OEMs. So it means we technically who are providing the, finished goods, or we can say the raw materials which is being used for the end product, that is the car, making affordable, reliable EVs, better reach, better tech, digital features, local supply chains, must redesign vehicles, invest in software and manage global rules. Governments and regulators, clean and safer way. So technically, this exercise we do in the pre-scene also. I have told you guys already to come up with 20 stakeholders. What is their power and interest and what is their expectation from us? Remember, every question we are doing at the end, we are talking about stakeholders. We are dealing with the stakeholders. So make sure you know the major stakeholders in our industry and what they expect from us, how we can manage. Moving on to the next chapter, global demand and analysis. Global EV demand is accelerating as falling battery costs and targeted policy incentives expand addressable market. As the cost is coming down, people want to, especially the younger generation, they want to be sustainable and they want to try something new. But adoption is uneven across regions and segments. Regions mean geography because of the cost, because of living standard, and because of infrastructure. Consumers are segmented by use case and income. Income plays a very important role because most of the time people will buy second hand used car because it's cheaper. And another reason, if you see, when we buy electric, it's very rare people are thinking to resell it because we don't know how much value we'll get in the resale. The resale value is less. Let's say compare a Toyota new car and electric new cars. Now after 5 years, what is the value of the car? After 5 years, right? Toyota definitely people will buy easily. They have the brand value. In fact, any other ICE engine cars, they'll get a good market for it. But EV, we don't know whether it will work. The battery life can go down. A lot of other problems come with the electric vehicles. Urban millennials in the young population, 90s born, prioritize compact, affordable, digitally enabled EVs. They are tech generation. Premium buyers value performance and brand. Fleet operators focus on total cost of ownership. Rural and emerging market buyers demand durability, affordability, and flexibility charging. Factors shaped by infrastructure maturity and financing access. Finance providers also one of the very important stakeholders. In fact, we have discussed this in pre-scene analysis. We should start our own financial services at Cewmlator. That might help us to grow our business. Price sensitivity is very high in India, Africa, and Latin America. So technically, if we go in certain markets, price sensitivity is too much. Even if there is like 10%, 20% difference, we can see a major difference in the demand. And it's very difficult for the companies to, match the price, or sometimes the labor cost is high. The tax itself is very high for international companies. That also makes it impossible to reduce the cost. We began the analysis by decoding global demand drivers. EV adoption is propelled by convergence of cost, policy, and consumer awareness. These forces vary in incentive or intensity across market, but collectively shape the global growth. But if you see the companies, they are maybe not selling directly, but even ICE engines and all. For example, BYD. BYD provides raw materials. I mean, raw material is technically OEMs in this industry to other car manufacturers. So BYD is selling directly their own brand, plus they are supplier of a lot of other car vehicles. EV buyers are not monolithic. Preference vary by income, geography, and use case. There is so much of difference. For example, here if you see rural buyers, logistic operations are there, corporate fleets, urban millennials, premium buyers, everyone is looking for a different thing. Urban millennials, we are talking about mid-income. Corporate fleet actually it's a good demand they want to do for their sustainability. Rural buyers, they are very price sensitive, let's say farmers and all. Premium buyers, they are looking for design, style, comfort, safety. Logistic operators, they are looking for cost per delivery. Ultimately, they want to save money. Despite rising interest, several frictions points delay conversion from intent to purchase. People are intent, but they don't purchase. Why? Because of the segmentation. Sometimes it's just the availability or after sales service, things like that can be a problem. Like here, we have mentioned few. Charging infrastructure is always a major barrier. Upfront cost, battery trust, brand confidence, financing access. Digital first UX and clear lifecycle assurance are now decisive purchase triggers for EV buyers worldwide. So technically, the new consumer who are already tech savvy, they can uh, buy it. The probability of them going to EV is better. Seamless end-to-end app and charging UX user experience. This might help. Transparent battery health and warranties. This is a major problem. As we know, the life of battery, even if you're using other products, let's say scooter. I had my own scooter, and after a few months, the battery is just going down and down. It's been 6 months, I'm not using. It started with 12 miles, but I think it will just go 6 miles now, or maybe less. Predictive maintenance and fleet grade telemetry, AI-driven diagnostics, remote fault resolutions, and fleet dashboards that improve uptime, reduce TCO, and make electrification more attractive for commercial operators. Now, moving on to supply chain, as we know that manufacturing of car, whether it's ICE engine or EV, it's very complex. The supply chain is across the world. It's spread across different countries. In the EV sector, supply chain operations are not just enablers, they are strategic differentiators. As the industry pivots from internal combustion engines to electric platforms, manufacturer must reconfigure legacy system into agile tech-driven ecosystem. Or we can say build up their own ecosystem, work on their own ecosystem. The EV value chain is uniquely complex. It integrates high-tech sourcing, lithium, cobalt, and semiconductors, precision manufacture, digital connectivity. Who are the leaders? Tesla, BYD, even Tata Motors from India demonstrate how vertical integration will help. In fact, BYD has taken over mines in Zimbabwe and I think in Chile. Tesla has acquired a majority stake in some of the lithium mining. So it's no more just strategic partnership. They are going and acquiring the businesses because they know the raw material is the major problem, or the power of supplier is higher here. So they want to control the supply. They want to control the entire supply chain or maximum possible. Value chain EV manufacturing integrates R&D, research and development, battery production, lightweight assembly, and digital after sales. Sourcing, strategic sourcing of lithium, cobalt, semiconductors, and aluminum is critical. So for sourcing, if you do our own mining, we'll get lithium also, cobalt also. For semiconductors, geopolitical issues are already going on, so we need to see. Distribution channels, we need to make sure. Latest tech in manufacturing, we discuss how BYD is, making 2 cars in a minute, 30 seconds each car. Why it is happening? Because of automation, robotics, AI, blockchain for cybersecurity. That is also important because a lot of patents come in. All these companies might have thousands and thousands of patents. It is required to otherwise any competitor will just take our product, open it, do reverse engineering and come up with that. So we need to have patent to safeguard it. So for strategic advantage, we need to have good value chain understanding, a controllable distribution channel, ethical sourcing, sustainable sourcing, tech advancement. Sourcing in the EV industry refers to the procurement of critical raw materials. What are the critical raw materials? The main thing is the lithium, what we are talking about. Apart from that, we can see in this that picture also, lithium ion batteries are there. Then we can talk about chip, we can talk about server, we can talk about the software. Everything is, technically connected. Like here, battery minerals, semiconductors, lightweight metals, charging infrastructure, software and electronics. Then if you look at some other things here, distribution channels. Technically, this thing is extra reading here in the chart. You can zoom and read out later. Now, if you go to the financial performance, ultimately the finance matters. Like resale value people are looking at. Do we have funding available? Do we have banks who are giving loan easier to this? To whom they are giving loan? That also makes a difference. What are the great options? What if the government come with a policy and pressurize bank to give easy loan for EV vehicles compared to ICE engine? One simple change will affect this. The electric vehicle manufacturing industry is undergoing a rapid financial transformation driven by tech innovation, shifting consumer preferences. and global regulatory momentum. As legacy automakers, who are legacy automakers? Like BMW is there, Audi is there, all of this top companies, Honda is there, Daimler, Chrysler, all these big players. Revenue growth is no longer confined to vehicle sales. It now encompasses every service, software platforms, and charging ecosystem. Investment flows and cost structure reveal deeper strategic intent. Capital is increasingly allocated towards gigafactories, having everything inside. Autonomous tech and circular economy models. Then growth trajectory and market expansion. EV manufacturers are experiencing accelerated revenue growth driven by rising consumer demand. They are getting revenue, but at the same time, the cost, the supply chain, the risk is also increasing. For example, Tesla reported 96 billion revenue in 2024, and Model Y is obviously their best selling. BYD, they have crossed 3 million vehicle sales. And BYD is no longer just in the car. They have got two buses. They are into so many different things, and they are suppliers for a lot of other car manufacturers. So they're getting revenue when others are getting revenue. So revenue growth in EV is increasingly tied to ecosystem monetization, charging, software, and energy. Firms that integrate these layers unlock diversified income streams and higher lifetime consumer value. Profitability, if you see, companies usually were in loss in these industries, but now slowly, last few years, they have started seeing some profitability. Profitability in EV manufacture remains uneven. Tesla maintains industry-leading operating margin is 17%. Vertical integration because mines and all. If you compare to Lucid and Fisker face margin compensation or compression due to high R&D spend, limited scale and supply chain. BYD balance profitability through in-house battery production and cost-effective manufacturing. Or BYD has different source of income. BYD is a best example of how they are controlling the entire ecosystem. But not every company can do it. In fact, being in China give them an edge. Why? Because the government is very, very supportive there. You look at the investment patterns, capital allocation and strategic focus. The EV industry is capital intensive, as we know. In fact, this is one of the important question for your exam. How to raise finance. So make sure you have the answer ready. Just tailor it, according to the need. What are the sources of finance we have in Cewmlator? What are the advantage and disadvantage of each option and how we can mitigate them? With billions allocated to gigafactory, battery, R&D and global expansion. Volkswagen committed over 180 billion through 2027 with one-third earmark for electrification and digitize. Tata Motors, another company from India, secured 1 billion in funding from TPG Rise Climate to accelerate EVs. So technically, all big groups are raising money. Cost structure and benchmarking. EV cost structures are fundamentally different from traditional ICE vehicles. Batteries account for 30 to 40% of total vehicle cost, followed by semiconductors, lightweight materials, and embedded software. External forces, if you look on, technically pestle analysis. I want you guys to do your own pestle analysis. This is just the starting point. The global electric vehicle industry's pivotal inflection point where rapid growth collides with mounting external pressure. So what's happening with the government? The best way to understand what is happening is look at the pestle and SWOT. Pestle is what? What government is doing, what policy they are coming up. Is we can talk about the economic situation of the market. Obviously, if the country is rich, the people have more money, then the sales will be higher. If it is a poor country, obviously sales will be down. Social, what is people trend, what kind of technological penetration we have, what is internet penetration. Technology, again, social and technology is interrelated, but social also depends on how people walk. Do they walk or do they have infrastructure or it's just they need to use cars? Environmental, how it is affecting the environment, the local policy can again play a role, and society concerned towards environment. Legal or regulatory framework, what new regulations are coming up. The other thing can be strength. Strength and weakness are internal to the business. What we have in Cewmlator, as we can see, for example, one weakness we have in Cewmlator is the chairperson is sitting in the board. It should not be there. No, that's what we do in the class. When you join the full class for Keystone, what we do, we go through all of this and we kind of predict what type of questions can come and how we can ask and how we can answer that. And that's the reason we are getting so good results. So Joining a session with the tutor always helps because it can save a lot of your time. For example, strength. What is the strength of Cewmlator? If you see, we have done IC engines. If you want to do it, we can do it again. So don't do strength and weakness generalize like this. Apply to the scenario. Look at the opportunity, what is happening in the market. Opportunity threat is external. So what is happening in the market will be same for Cewmlator. Okay. Strength, weakness, we have to be specific. Opportunity threat should be normal. Strategic implications. Resilience depends on balancing innovation with risk mitigation through diversified sourcing, policy engagement, and ecosystem partnership. If you are not having everything in house, it's better to partner. Like from the pre-scene, we can make out we are producing batteries. What about the mining? Even they have just say producing batteries. There is no clear thing on that. Global events can also have an effect. For example, Russia-Ukraine conflict, US-China tech decoupling, or tariff thing going on. Summits happening regarding climate. COVID-19 had a very major economic impact on the countries. On an individual level, smaller business, medium business, a lot of them collapsed, went bankrupt. All of this can have an impact. So global events are no longer peripherals. They directly shape cost structures, compliance burden, strategic agility, because government will have pressure from the people. What we need to understand this, or maybe what are the disruptors here? Battery, ethical sourcing, carbon neutral manufacturing, inclusive workforce and governance. So these are the things the companies need to focus. So ESG is no longer reputational. It's like mandatory thing. ESG, sustainability, and everything is like part of how the business is growing. Moving on to the next one, future outlook. The manufacturing industry stands at transformative crossroad where exponential growth converges with tech reinvention and systematic disruption. Global EV adoption is accelerating, fueled by climate mandates, consumer demand, and capital inflows. Investor, any industry grows when the banks and other financial institutions or rich individuals, they keep on investing into the business, or ultimately the shareholders. If they put in money, they will get money for R&D, and something good can come out of that. The same thing they have mentioned here, all these points. Maybe it's good for you to read. Then innovation disruption, if you see, we have some example here. Tesla's 4680 cells and giga casting reduced complexity and cost. Then AI powered predictive maintenance is there, that is done by Volvo and General Motors. Solid state battery commercialization Toyota is doing. Obviously, Toyota will never stop. Vehicle to everything is there. Honda and Ford are piloting platforms that allows EV to communicate with infrastructure grids and other vehicles, enhancing traffic efficiency. Especially this will help in automation, self-driving cars. Like we have self-driving cars already available in China and US some part. So there, if it is one electric, they'll communicate with other electric vehicles. So, it will be safer when they are doing self-driving cars. We have to look at the risk also, major risk what we are facing. Supply chain, cyber security is a major risk. In fact, this can be our exam question. Supply chain diversification, cyber security investment, ESG compliance, channel planning. Channel planning was asked in the previous exam also. Resilience, or we can say, engineering is required, R&D is required. Now, to conclude with, we have some points here. First is, technically, it's a transforming decade. What will happen now, 2025 to 2030? Or we can say what is happening now. The companies have become profitable. Before this, in the last decade, they were not profitable. So there is a lot of things happening, and a lot of innovations are getting successful in this decade. But at the same time, the government subsidy is slowly going out. So that will be a very, transformative decade. Innovation is required at every layer, from battery to logistics to after sale service to infrastructure. Now autonomous car has become a reality. The transformation brings heightened exposure, lithium price surge over 400%. Can you imagine? Between 2020 and 2022. So it just work on demand and supply. Then geopolitical tensions, a lot of wars and things were going on till now, and still is on in some places. So this was, if you see from COVID-19 till now, we have seen a lot of geopolitical tensions. Every country is just trying to close the borders. They want to give jobs to the local people and work for the benefit of their own interest first, rather than think about globally. So that is also affecting the industries. As capital market recalibrate around sustainability and government intensify decarbonization mandates, EV manufacture becomes a litmus test for industrial range. So it will take time, but one thing is for sure, EV is here to stay and it will stay for a long time. How fast it grows, that becomes a question. So that is overview of industry analysis. I would strongly recommend you, if you need more help, you can get in touch with me on LinkedIn at Misbah Saudagar, or you can visit our website as we have given here. You can also join our live sessions, or you can reach out to us for a free mini course. We give free mocks also, because being a registered tuition provider with CIMA, and we have worked with hundreds of students. We have our students across the globe, so we are working very flexibly. And the best thing is we provide individual attention. We also have one-on-one sessions. So if you need any support, do let us know. We can plan and make sure that we get good marks. Thank you.